Welcome to Storycomic Presents, where we interview amazing storytellers and artists. This is episode 515. I'm your host, Barney Smith of Storycomic.com, and we're excited to have with us the internationally acclaimed and celebrated New England author, Don Lesser. Don.
Thank you.
How you doing?
Happy to be here.
Yeah. And I got to say, so for our listeners out there, for those that don't watch the video of this, Don has the perfect looking author's writing room right there. You got the book, you got inspirational framed pictures. You have a bookshelf behind you. There's a clock. This is a very definitive. And do I see behind you, is that an actual opened book? Is that
what it actually is sheet music.
Oh, okay.
For some reason, I have a ton of sheet music from the 60s, when I played piano more seriously. And so I still have them. So I am relearning the piano.
Okay. All right. Does that kind of help you too during the writing process, is to just kind of tickle the ivories a bit and help for inspiration?
To be honest, at this point in my life, no. My background is, I have an MFA in fiction, which I got in 81, became a tech writer and a corporate trainer and a programmer professionally for 30 years, wrote a lot of food articles for about 9 years. So at this point, I just feel like I've been living by my writing since 1981. And, basically the way it works is it's like a shark. If you don't write, you don't get paid. If you don't get paid, you don't eat. So I just don't have time for things like writer's block. Okay. And it seems to carry over into the fiction that, right. I sit down the fiction is sometimes 20 minutes to, 3 hours, as opposed to, 12 hours a day of writing for hire. But,
right.
But, I can usually just get something out.
Right. Now, so we want to talk a little bit about, because you're just as of this recording, you have an upcoming book, but it will be released probably when this goes live. It's called Crystal Springs.
Right.
Yeah. So what was the first spark for Crystal Springs? Was it a place, a character, or a moment? What's the inspiration before you started writing this?
Well, it's about 6 friends over 40 years. But there's also a woman who ends up dead in it. And I think the inspiration was the story of another woman who basically was partying in a hotel room with she was a waitress, and she was partying with her boss and a bunch of local luminaries, did a bunch of cocaine, had a seizure, and basically they tried to sort of revive her. She fell asleep. They went out for breakfast. When they came back, she was dead. Mm. So something similar happens in Crystal Springs, but that was the basis of it. And then I just brought in it takes place in the Pioneer Valley. I know the Pioneer Valley, so I brought in a whole lot of stuff, that I knew.
Right. And as you mentioned, so the novel is rooted in the Pioneer Valley, and yeah. What does that landscape kind of do for the story then?
Well, interestingly, it looks exactly like the cover of the book. I was really pleased that they found that picture, because a log bridge like that over a small stream figures prominently in the book. So I was very pleased about that. It looks, it's forest and woodland. It's let's see how to explain it. There's a lot of maple, a lot of oak, and a lot of small bushes. One of the areas around us has a lot of lady slippers. I don't know if you know lady slippers. Mm-hmm. That I've been photographing probably for 20 years. I have photographs going back for 20 years on them. But But basically, the Pioneer Valley is just this beautiful part of Massachusetts. It's not the Berkshires, which is, you know, where everybody used to vacation, and it's got Lenox and Tanglewood and all sorts of stuff. And it's not the Boston area, which is, much more urban, but it's just this beautiful area. And they call it the Happy Valley. And a lot of people come to go to school, and then a certain percentage never leave. And I guess I'm one of them.
And that kind of goes through with the Connecticut River goes through the Pioneer
Yeah, the
Valley.
Connecticut River, which, by the way, if you're interested in geology, is a tectonic plate. So that had things broken differently, Northampton would be a beach and Amherst would be underwater.
Yeah.
But yeah, the Connecticut River goes right down the center of it, which separates Vermont and New Hampshire, separates the Berkshires or the pre-Berkshires from the rest of Massachusetts on down to through Connecticut.
Mm. And your everyman character, his name is Steven Bennett in the
Yeah.
story, correct?
Yes. I
Okay.
took great pains to make him not autobiographical. You know.
And this is also like a decade spanning book too, correct?
Yeah, 40 years. 40 years.
Okay. So when did you realize that it was going to be like a decade spanning book when you're putting this together?
Pretty early on, because basically he comes to comes to the Pioneer Valley, meets a group of people who are slightly older than him, but he meets them, becomes friends with them, has an affair with one of them, and she ends up giving birth to a daughter who it's never clear whether the daughter is really his daughter or not, and it's one of the mysteries of the book. But once she grows up and ends up dead, which is not really giving away too much on the book. Once she ends up dead, then I realized I had to span a long period of time because I wanted her to be in her 20s when she went.
Mm. And so, what details then were of the place itself for the Pioneer Valley mattered most for you to kind of get right, so that those that are familiar with the Pioneer Valley are like, oh, this definitely feels like this, or those that have never been there feel as though they know what it feels like.
Yeah, well, I worked really hard to get the land,
Mm.
just the way the land was. Basically, the fields of Leverett, which is outside of Amherst, very hilly and it's a former farming community. But I had a lot of fun playing with the Pioneer Valley because I took Amherst and Northampton, combined them into one town, and took the 5 colleges and combined them into 2 colleges, one college, one university. And so parts of the book are true. I mean, if you've been in the Pioneer Valley in the 80s, the 90s, the aughts, you'll recognize and you'll know they're true. And parts of them are completely made up. And so I had a lot of fun, both playing with it and getting things as accurate as possible.
And what was the decision to kind of fictionalize some of the towns and some of the locations then, as compared to having real locations?
Yeah, well, part of it is I read a lot of science fiction as a boy, so I'm very accustomed to doing that. But my inspiration, I think, was Sherlock Holmes, 221B Baker Street, which is a real street and a real address that Conan Doyle had in mind, but 221B doesn't exist.
Hmm.
And by making things fictional, it gave me a little bit more leeway to make things up or to make things fit the narrative. If I was telling the story of the actual Northampton, the actual Amherst, I would feel that I'd be limited to saying things couldn't say anything that was made up. I had to be completely true.
Hmm. And would you say then, like the Pioneer Valley in the book is a character in the
Very
story?
definitely, yeah, very definitely, because the characters all live in the Pioneer Valley. The cover represents a reservoir near Belchertown, which is Crystal Springs. and the characters all like go walking in that, and it becomes, they become very much part of the world of the Pioneer Valley.
Mm,
So I don't think it would work in any other community.
okay. So talking about a little bit about Steven Bennett.
Right.
So who would you say then Steven is at the beginning, and what does he think he wants at the beginning of the book?
Well, what he thinks he wants is he is leaving Cambridge because of an accident that starts off the book. But then when he comes to the Pioneer Valley, he wants to get a master's degree in history. And he's thinking that he'll become a historian. He'll, either study history, get his PhD, and teach, or just do something with history as a way of sort of elevating himself from where he was before that. Before, when he was in Cambridge, he was basically a cook at a local French restaurant, a line cook.
Hmm.
I'm very concerned with him not being a chef, because the difference between a chef and a cook is the chefs are the ones who run the kitchen and who make up the dishes, and the cooks are the ones who execute.
Hmm.
They're the ones who make the same dish 15 times a night, and it's the same way each time.
Yeah. Well, hey there. If you're enjoying our podcast, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or leave us a 5-star review on your favorite podcast platform. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep this show going. We love hearing from you, so any feedback is welcome. And thank you for being a part of our podcast family and for all your support. It truly means a lot to us. Also, to found family is a key theme.
Definitely, yeah.
How did those bonds form then on the page?
On the page, what happened is a number of the people lived not too far from where Stephen got an apartment in Crystal Springs. And by the way, Crystal Springs is the old name for Belchertown. Belchertown was renamed to honor Governor John C. Belcher, who was a colonial governor. But Crystal Springs was a much prettier name. So everybody lived in Crystal Springs, and he sort of met them on the bus, became enamored of one woman and friends with the other people. And so, that was the start of it. They just became friends, and they stayed friends, or they stayed in touch. Let's put it that way.
Okay. And so that does bring up my next question then is just so from a book perspective, from an author perspective, but also from a personal perspective, Don, I guess my open question is, then what do you feel as though what makes friendships last across decades in
Hmm.
your view?
I think what commonality. I mean, if you've got to have something in common and something that keeps you together, because I think what happens is we all have that experience that we're friends with somebody deeply or people deeply at one period of our lives, but then in another period something changes and we're no longer friends with them. So I
Hmm.
think you need to have something that it's just something that keeps you together, some kind of common interest or a common activity.
Hmm. And what would you say then to in Crystal Springs? What was what relationship was in the novel was the hardest to write?
The hardest to write was Stephen and his second wife. Well, the second woman in the book. The first woman in the book, Madeline, who is the woman he becomes deeply in love with, who has the child. That was kind of easy because it was such a desperate passion. But trying to get a relationship that isn't based on a desperate passion, but is based on a deep love,
Mm.
and a deep caring for the other person. That was really hard to do.
And so looking at too about just from an author perspective for the is from the structure and time, a 40-year journey is a big container. um, How did you decide what to show versus what to skip during that?
Um, that was completely um, organic, I guess is the way to put it.
Okay.
I would just keep writing, and a certain scene would suggest itself, and it fit into the book because of something that some of the characters did, and so I just kept following that. Um, I don't think I made a serious concentrated effort to remove stuff or to choose select things. It was
Okay.
more what, what I needed for the characters to stay friends and to keep interacting with each other and to grow and change. So
Mm.
that by the end of the book, they're very different than they are at the beginning of the book, clearly. And their lives have, when you're 20 25 versus 65, your life is very different.
Mm.
You know.
And so, what was your strategy? So, when you put the book down, how much did you end up having edited and cutting out as compared to the first draft to the final draft?
It was more a question of the other side that I was in writing workshops where basically 900 to 1,000 words was sort of the amount that you could read in the class. When I was
Mm.
doing food writing, 900 to 1,000 words was the size of each article, and
Right.
so you know I do shrimp in 900 words. So I started writing 900 word segments, and then when I was putting the book together, I realized 900 words is like too short. I just need to stretch it, and so basically when I rewrote the book, I think 10 times. Um, as I went through each draft, I basically allowed myself to stretch things out, to tell more of what happened, to not to not just try to boil everything down to like one sentence, which I
Mm.
still really love. I love the thought of taking like a paragraph and turning it into a sentence.
So you had to pace because as you mentioned, you had to write articles before
Right,
as a job, and now having to like stretch it out. Um, what did you learn? I mean, because you said you got your MFA in '81,
right.
so you've been a professional writer for literally decades.
Mhm.
So with this book, what did you learn? Uh, what did you learn from writing at this point in your life by putting this book together?
Well, what I mostly learned is how to write fiction. I mean, I
Mm.
spent most of my life writing nonfiction, and so it's very easy for me to do a description of something. And so there's lots of descriptions in the book. And it turns out that I'm good at dialogue. So between descriptions and dialogue, I took a lot of care to make sure the dialogue advanced the plot and advanced the characters.
Mm.
So pretty much what I learned is literally how to write fiction as opposed to just simply writing nonfiction or of one sort or another.
Right. And as you probably know, you probably heard of the phrase like you have pantsers and
Yeah,
plotters. Um, it sounds like you're more of a pantser than. Did you do a lot of heavy outlining before, or did you just kind of like go
yeah.
organically to see where the story went?
No, well, I'm more of a pantser in that regard, but I've always found that if I know what the ending is, like the final sentence or the final scene, then I write towards it, even if it changes along the way and that I end up not using it. I
Mm.
need to know where it's going. So in that regard, I'm a plotter, but so
Did
it's
you?
a hybrid. It's definitely a hybrid, but it's
Yeah,
definitely like to explore. You start writing and things happen. People say things, characters do things that you
yeah.
want to follow.
Did the story go in a direction like did Steven or any other characters start going in a direction? You're like, well, let's see what happens. I'm not sure what's going on here. Like,
No, well, they pretty much all, how to put it, on the large arc, they all pretty much did what I wanted them to do. On the short arc, they all just did their own thing, and I just sort of followed what they were doing. Um,
and did you and how how was the editing process uh,
Well,
for
the
the show?
editing, throughout my life, I've never liked to edit. I've always
Yeah.
found looking at my words to be terrible. But with it, well, in the last, I'd say in the last 10 years, I've discovered that I really like editing. And I
Mm,
like taking, like I say, taking a paragraph and boiling it down, or writing a sentence that I combine several sentences, or writing dialogue where I might do a half a page and boil it down to four interactions.
yeah.
And, you know, I really, really enjoy that, much more than I ever did in my life.
Right. There was that clicking sound. Is that like your phone or something?
No, I don't think.
There
Um,
was I don't know if there was like you had your phone nearby. Maybe it was like
yeah.
I had a clicking sound that was
Oh,
happening.
uh,
Mm,
sorry. Yeah.
no, yeah, it was like that's fine. Um, where was I at here? And so what I guess so talking about readers for the book, what kind of reader do you think will connect with Crystal Springs first?
Well, first of all, baby boomers, because the characters are baby boomers.
Yeah.
Secondly, anybody who likes, who grew up in a city but likes the country,
Mm,
and anyone who wants to know about New England. Then anybody who is interested in the characters. Yeah. So if you want to learn about the Pioneer Valley, or want to learn about New England, I think it would be a really good book in that regard, because when you're done, you're really steeped in Western Massachusetts.
mm,
Live in some other place like San Francisco or Iowa or Florida, someplace that where the land is very, very different. I
right.
think you'll get a real feel and a real flavor of what it's like to live in New England.
Right. And so and the book was published through Rootstock Publishing, correct?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. And how was that working with Rootstock Publishing?
My to be completely honest and candid about it, the second half of working with them was great, because I
Mhm.
think Samantha Colber, who runs it,
Yeah.
knows publishing inside and out, and she just took over. And the cover came out great, the typesetting and stuff, which is something I paid no attention to. She did a great job in terms of the making the book available to different podcasts, or different contests, or different marketing things. She was fantastic. The editing process was a little harder, I think.
Mm.
Um, you know, but but again, I've been a professional writer all my life. So one of the things I've learned is there are people who love your stuff. There are people who don't love your stuff. There are people who get what you're doing. There are people who don't get what you're doing. And so I took a lot of what I might have reacted to negatively, and just took it as a place where, like, I needed to be clearer, or this scene's not working, so I need to make it work better.
Mm.
So
Yeah. Okay.
I behaved
And
like
that's
an
always
adult.
the hard. Yeah, editing. It's always hard to have somebody like kind of like pick at your work like that. But it's you
Mhm.
know, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, it is hard. And it's hard, they always say kill your darlings, which
yeah.
is, all the beautiful phrases that you've come up with that you just basically get rid of, in the interest of making the book. This book, more than other books, I took a lot of pains to bring in a lot of detail from, not so much my own life, but my own observations of the Pioneer Valley. And I'm writing another book now where it takes place in the same world, but I'm way less concerned with bringing in the details of it. I'm way more concerned with how does the plot and how do the characters interact.
Mm.
You know,
And yeah, that was going to be my other question. Is like, was there anything that you had to cut out of Crystal Springs that you said, well, fine, I'll just write a new book, and I'm going to add. This is too good to not put in a book.
I didn't have to cut anything, but you get into this habit of revising, and even now, when I hold the finished copy in my hand, I wish I had one more draft that I could go through. It's just because one of the sayings that I've taken to heart is that all books are failures, and the
Mm,
key is how close you get to your original conception. How close the failure
right,
is really the key, and then each book should fail closer and closer.
right.
I'm
Well,
taking it to heart.
yeah, and also too is like I know I had an author on a couple years ago that mentioned that it was as soon as the book is published, it doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to the reader.
Yeah, yeah. What I've also discovered, particularly from like the food writing I've done, because I bring in autobiographical details. Once I bring in a detail, the detail is gone. I mean, it's still part of my life, and I still can remember it, but I have no need to write it again. I have no need to talk about it. So that's kind of interesting. That as I write, I sort of use up my autobiography and or
Right.
use up the details of my life, and you know, now I need to make them all up.
Yeah. So Don, this is great. Now, if people want to pick up your book, they could probably go to Rootstock Publishing and get it
Yep,
there.
through Rootstock Publishing. It also will be available on Amazon,
Okay.
although I stress that it is not published by Amazon, which means you can buy it in a bookstore, you can buy it or you can take it out of a library.
Right.
Uh, Bookstores and libraries justifiably do not like Amazon, since Amazon's stated purpose is to put them out of business.
Right.
You know.
And also too, go to your local library and ask your local library to pick it up.
Yes, and both bookstores and libraries. I'm learning a lot about the publishing world that I never knew,
Mm,
and both of them have the ability to buy additional, extra copies that they then can return. So
right. Yeah. Perfect. So
yeah,
Don, you mentioned another book coming up. You're gonna have to come back on when you have your another book coming out.
well, I'd be happy to. You know,
Yeah.
um, I wrote a science fiction novel that was sort of kicking around in my head for 20, 30 years, and that's okay. That needs another couple of passes. And now I'm writing another book that takes place in the Pioneer Valley, which for some reason I find very congenial. So,
All right. So is it like a spiritual successor or related to Crystal Springs?
well, what I have is one of the characters comes back. Well, a minor character in Crystal Springs becomes a major character in the new book. And
Okay.
what I want to do is take some of the characters who are major characters in Crystal Springs, and just have some of the characters see them in the background.
Okay.
Just so that I mean, it is a small town, so you in the real world you would see these people. So
Oh, cool.
yeah,
Excellent. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Don. I had a great time talking to you.
thank you so much. I enjoyed it as well. It was very nice.